Welcome to Say When. I'm your host, Holly Toscanini. This podcast is for any woman who's had enough of restrictive diets, feeling bad about their bodies, or putting their lives on hold until they lose the weight. If you've had enough of diet culture, then it's time to say when. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Say When podcast. Today, my guest is Deanna Beaton. Deanna created Intuitive Fitness, where she does non-diet personal training, intuitive eating coaching, and body image coaching. She is fat, queer, anti-oppression, health at every size aligned, and works with women and non-binary folks to empower them to define health on their own terms, find fitness that works for them, and have some fun doing it. Recognizing that we're all each a whole person and not just a physical body, she set out to build a system that takes every part of us into account: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, all of it. That means it feels good. It's fun and it fits every phase of your life. Now, by incorporating intuitive movement, intuitive eating, and body image work, you'll finally be able to step out of the binary fat lazy, fit lazy, and acknowledge fitness for what it is: one part of an interdependent, ever-changing whole self. Now, Deanna is an NASM certified personal trainer, intuitive eating coach, and body image coach who was tired of not seeing herself represented in the fitness space. So she's here to tell you that despite what everything in the world tells you, fat people do in fact move their bodies. Now, she was looking for training to help her get stronger and live her life, but all she found was shame-based exercises that focused on changing her size. She said she couldn't find what she needed, so she made it herself. And Deanna's approach to fitness is weight and body neutral and focused on you as the expert of yourself. And she believes that when we build trust in our bodies, we take back the power to find how fitness fits best in every phase of our life. So welcome to the podcast, Deanna. I am so excited for our conversation today.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
So let's start off by maybe asking if you could share a little bit more. I gave some, info about your journey in the introduction, but what really led you to become a personal trainer in the first place?
Yeah. Well, okay. Picture it. Sicily, 1912. No, never mind. That is Sophia
It's another
Petrillo's
story.
My story. Picture it. Chicago, April 2020.
Mhm.
I had been locked down in my apartment for about a month and I was going insane. But specifically, I had been living a very active life. Like, I live in the city. I walked, I took public transportation, I worked out, I was moving a lot. And then all of a sudden, I was locked in my 1-bedroom apartment, afraid to even leave the apartment because even to just go in the hallway, I could be exposed to COVID and we had no idea what was going on, right?
Right.
So I very suddenly went from active to like sedentary and had no space to move really.
Mhm.
And I was like, I have to do something. And one tiny thing that I know from a lifetime of experience that could help would be moving, getting back into movement, because I grew up playing sports my entire life. So I knew firsthand all of the benefits that exercise and movement and fitness could bring. And so I was like, okay, I need this back in my life. And so I was looking for exercise that I could do in my tiny 1-bedroom apartment that was appropriate for my completely out of practice body, because I hadn't hardly moved in a month, right?
Mhm.
I hadn't walked more than like 3 steps in any direction in a month. And a completely wrecked nervous system, right? Just like terrified all the time with no equipment, right? Like, I had all of these like extra layers of difficulty on top of
Yeah.
it. But also, those things are like pretty common, pretty
Mhm.
normal things. Like, maybe they're not always all right on top of each other in that moment, but like having a wrecked nervous system, like being super stressed, not having space, not having time, not having equipment, like those are all very normal barriers to movement. So whenever I was looking for exercise, I couldn't find anything that fit for me for that moment. Either everything said it was a beginner, but it was way too hard. It was not for beginners, or it was completely like vanity based and like about how you end up looking, right? Like, scorch those calories, blast that booty, like
Right.
snatch that waist kind of stuff. And I was like, I am trying to survive a pandemic here. I am like a jaguar locked in a cage, and I just need to move my body. I do not care about these exercises, about my love handles. Like, do you not
Right.
understand what we're going through here? And no, they didn't. The fitness industry, especially prior to
Mm,
COVID,
mhm.
they did not care about that, because toxic fitness culture, and that's what I was running into. Toxic fitness culture doesn't care about any of those quote unquote excuses that you have. They
Right.
don't care about your mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health. They don't care about any of those other things. Toxic fitness culture tells us your body and what it looks like and how well it performs under very like weird circumstances, like mud runner courses or whatever. That's what's important. And I, in that
Right.
moment, was like, that's not important to me at all.
Right.
Where is this? And I couldn't find it. And so I actually have a history of not only growing up playing sports, but I also worked in and around gyms for about a decade before I
Mhm.
started this. And so I was a lifeguard and a lifeguard trainer, and I was working in and around gyms. And I was also a comedian, which does not make money. So that's why I was doing other things
Sure.
to make money. But that April of 2020, I started learning about how to become a personal trainer
Mhm.
strictly for myself, just so I could build some sort of shame-free exercise program for myself. And then whenever I was like looking more into it, I was realizing there were not any people that I could find in larger
Mhm.
bodies. There were not fat personal trainers. And I was like, I have been exercising my entire life and I've never been small. There's I know from a lifetime of experience, there's nothing I could do short of very drastic, unhealthy measures that would
Mhm.
make me a smaller person. So why aren't there any fat personal trainers? I can do this and I'm fat. Like, they are not mutually exclusive. So where are they? And once I was like taking in the information, becoming a personal trainer just for myself, I was like, I have all the skills. I have an accidental history of doing this my
Mhm.
entire life, as it turns out. I think I need to be that person I couldn't find for other people to be able to find me. And so that is how I turned into a professional non-diet personal trainer.
I think that's so fascinating because that's, as you were talking, I'm like, oh my God, that is one of the aspects of lockdown in the beginning that I think was so glossed over by the fitness industry is that at that time we didn't need a snatched waist. I needed some
Mhm.
sanity, right? I needed to
Mhm.
to give my body a chance to process some of the fear and the emotion that I'm feeling, move that out of
Yeah.
my body. I needed to feel like I had some control over what was going on in my life, expressing myself. And really, all of that is the stress management alone is what I see as
Mhm.
the top benefits for movement rather than just burning calories to look a certain way. And it was completely just denied that that was going to be the
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
People were still selling us weight loss, right? Even during the
Yeah.
pandemic, when that was the least of our concerns,
Oh my gosh, were they
n-
ever? This is the
lock,
perfect time to lose all
yeah,
the weight. Now that
yeah,
you're
no
locked in home.
distractions,
And then next time everyone sees you, you're going to be so thin. And
right?
I was losing my mind over all
Yeah,
of that messaging. Yeah,
I think there are a lot of aspects of toxic fitness culture. We could probably spend an entire episode just talking about that. Uh,
easily.
But what I'm interested in is knowing is based on your knowledge of all of that, you see it. How do you help your clients see it? How do you help them recognize that and then begin to change their perspective or move away from those really harmful concepts?
Yeah. Well, toxic fitness culture is the jock BFF of diet culture. And all of these toxic anything cultures are basically, like, in a nutshell, anything that shames and blames you and makes you feel guilty or like you are wrong or bad or not good enough just as you are. So I can point out lots of specifics to my clients about what like that's toxic fitness culture. So is that, so is that, so is that. But I can also just tell you, like, if anything makes you feel like you're not good enough, it is some sort of toxic something culture, right?
Mhm.
So for everybody out there, that is like, let's just start there. If any culture, if any messaging, if any belief is telling you you're not good enough, or you should be ashamed of just literally who you are, then that's it. That's a problem. Red flag, turn, run the other direction, right?
Absolutely. And you mentioned not being able to find someone that looked like you in the fitness industry that you could relate
Mm-hmm.
to. And I think that's because there's so much misinformation about if you're in a bigger body, you can't possibly be healthy. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't think people understand that. I don't think they give credit to people in larger bodies that are healthy as heck. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people that are out there doing amazing things that are not tiny, that are not
Mm-hmm.
underweight, so to speak. And I don't believe a lot of gyms were hiring, especially women like that. I actually
Mm-hmm.
worked with a woman who used to be an aerobics instructor in the 90s, and they had to be a certain size. So they were weighed and measured
Mm-hmm.
to make like airline attendants, right? And they
Yeah.
all had to wear specific like leotard bodysuit things that showed their bodies in certain ways. I mean, it was just sort of ridiculous that it wasn't about fitness at all. It was more about, dancing Barbies. I love Barbie, don't get
Yeah.
me wrong, but that's not exactly going to work for everybody. Not
Yeah.
everybody's going to look like that. Now that you are aware of this and you see it and you've created this program for yourself, could you explain to the audience a little bit about your concepts of intuitive movement and intuitive eating and how they really form the cornerstone of your entire coaching philosophy?
Yeah, definitely. So I started becoming a personal trainer. And right, so I started from a place of I'm not shaming and blaming my body anymore. Like,
Mhm.
this doesn't work. I'm not doing it. So I'm going to figure this out for myself this other way. And then whenever I was realizing I wanted to share this work with the world, I was like, okay, I need to get serious about figuring out exactly how to say this in a way that doesn't make anyone feel ashamed. And so then that's whenever I discovered our mentor, Stephanie. And so I joined her program and I became an intuitive eater and intuitive eating coach
Mhm.
in her program. And every step of the way, whenever I was learning about intuitive eating, I could see how if this was just tweaked a little bit, it would also be applied to movement. So
Yes.
every step of the way, I was like, oh, this isn't just about eating. This is about the way that we think about, in this case, eating. And so with every principle, and there's 10 principles of intuitive eating, with every principle, I've taken it and I've tweaked it and applied it to movement. So I've created the 10 principles of intuitive movement that I
Mhm.
teach all of my clients. And just like with intuitive eating principles, it's not tips and tricks and tactics about do move this way and don't move that way. It's about reframing how we think about movement and health and our body. And so, with those foundational principles, then you can get into the tips and tricks and tactics of like, okay, but for me and my particular body and my particular schedule and my particular interests, how do I put all of that in there? And so that's what I do with my clients. But yeah, everything is based on my 10 principles of intuitive movement that really get you into a healthy relationship with movement in the first place.
Now, as someone who has experienced some injuries, knee and shoulder injuries, and I think on your website you
Mm-hmm.
even mentioned you have asthma, how do you
Mm-hmm.
tailor your training to accommodate diverse physical needs and conditions for your clients?
Oh, sure. So with my one-on-one work with clients, it's all completely tailored to the individual in so many ways, including, if you have any injuries or any just sort of like sticky spots or like crunchy spots or just things that you don't like for whatever reason. And we can get into that for sure. But like, yeah, so all of my personal training work one-on-one is absolutely tailored to everybody. But part of that knowledge that I have to be able to share with clients of like modifications and alterations and variations of exercise come, yes, from my personal training certification, but then also I have taken a size inclusive training certification.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that was so enlightening, not because I learned very much new stuff, but because it focused on people in larger bodies, how to cue and modify exercises for people in larger bodies. And she got into the physics and the physiology of why certain moves are more likely to injure people in different body sizes and shapes, and how to adjust. And it's not that I learned a bunch of new stuff, although I did, but every single move, I was like, I knew it. I knew it. I knew that hurt me more than people in smaller bodies. Or like, I knew it wasn't that I was out of shape. I knew it's because that doesn't work like that. If your hips are, at a different angle, or like everything I learned just was she explained the science of it, and she like validated my lived experience, which I knew was real, right? I live in my own body. I'm the expert of my own body. I know that when a personal trainer tells me to squat in that particular way, they have only ever felt squatting in their small body and with their weight distribution in their particular way. And that's not how my body is shaped. And that's not how a lot of people's bodies are shaped. So whenever a personal trainer in a smaller body cues you and it doesn't feel right, and they don't have the lived experience, or they haven't taken this course, they don't realize, like, it's not that the person exercising is bad at it. It's that body just doesn't move that way. It's not wrong. It's not broken. You don't need to like make them push past it. There are other ways to get them into that move, like a squat per se. And so I have training for my personal training certification, from the size inclusive training certification, but then also from my own lived experience of moving through the world and exercising in all kinds of ways in my own larger body.
How
And very
powerful.
injured body.
Yes. Well, and how powerful to be able to not only say, I knew there was something else going on, but to be able to prove it with science, because so many
Yeah.
times clients want to see the proof, right? It's like, it sounds like a great concept, but can you show me the science? And it also makes me a little sad that all personal training programs don't have size inclusivity built into them, that you have to take a special separate certification, because I
Yeah.
guarantee you there are plenty of people out there that won't bother.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, most of that certification was sort of like justifying itself, because people are so biased to think like, well, fat people just aren't trying hard enough. And so it's like, that's not what's happening. So they do spend a lot of time on describing the health at every size, science and information and stuff like that. But yeah, I really think that teaching personal training should include teaching personal training to people of all body sizes and shapes, right? It shouldn't be that you have to go out and get extra special training to facilitate what is more than half of the United States, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I know that your approach is weight and body neutral. And you really do embody and kind of teach the principles of health at every size. How would you say that the health at every size movement has really influenced your ability to do this work, and maybe even coach people on their injuries and having conversations with their maybe even medical providers?
Sure. Well, I first came across the concept of health at every size in 2012, but I didn't read the book or like get too far into it, but it's just been like percolating in the back of my head ever since then. And so whenever I started training for myself in 2020, that instantly came back to me, and I was like, let me see what that thing was about. And so from the get-go, that's been the foundation of my practice and my work. But basically, health at every size, it dives into the science of whether or not it's true that we can control our size and weight. And the science says, no, we cannot. We do not know how to do that. And so every thought and belief that's built on top of this false belief of I can control my weight, I can control the size of my body. Anything that's built on top of that, I mean, it's a house of cards, right? It's built
Mhm.
on lies. So helping people realize that any beliefs that they have about either how in control of their body and health they are, is
Mhm.
probably we have a lot less control over that than we think. But then
Absolutely.
also the moral valuation and the moral judgment we have
Mm.
about if we like what size and shape our body is. So whenever it comes to like injuries and asthma and just anything outside of the perfect healthy norm, health at every size really helps bring compassion and scientific understanding to the question of like, are you sure that that's how bodies are really supposed to work? Like, do you really think you're never ever supposed to be injured ever? Or that you're
Yeah.
supposed to be able to heal instantly? Or, right? So just questioning, like, is it true that being fat makes you more likely to have asthma? It's not, by the way. But I can't even tell you the number of people who I've talked to and who've messaged me out of nowhere just to be like, my doctor literally told me that I should lose weight and that would
Mhm.
get rid of my asthma. And it's like,
Ugh.
oh my gosh, that is not how that works.
Yeah. I was just having a conversation with a previous client, and we were kind of reviewing some conversation she'd had with her doctor, and she had no comorbidity. She had no high blood pressure, no diabetes. She didn't have hypertension. She had like nothing wrong with her except her
Hmm.
body mass index was not where he wanted her to. And he was trying to convince her to
Hmm.
have gastric bypass surgery just
Oh,
because of her
wow.
size, no other physical problems. And so she was fortunate. She was able to find a health at every care provider that she could connect with and that she felt was
Hmm.
supportive. But there are so many people out there that don't even know it's possible to question your doctor or to
Right.
say, I'm going to decline to be weighed today. There's so many people that don't know
Yeah.
they have that right.
Yeah, and that is like the core of what I try to teach people is that you are the expert of you and you have the authority to tell a doctor that, yeah, you don't want to be weighed. You have the authority to decide what's right for you. You have the
Mhm.
authority to find the right healthcare provider for you because right, the confusion is like the word health. Like, what is health? What
Yes.
is the measurement of health? That doctor decided that the only or the most important measure of health is BMI, which is absolute nonsense for so many reasons. We don't even have time to get into it. But
Hmm.
right, so that doctor's measure of health does not match my measure of health.
Right.
So that doctor would not be a good fit for me. I want me and my
Hmm.
doctor to be in agreement about what measures of health are important, right? And so that's a lot of the confusion. It's just like secret metrics that we're not really
Hmm.
talking about, like, or confusing metrics, right? Your measure of health versus their measure of health. Whereas if you can get on the same page about that, then it's a lot easier to take ownership over who you want to help you get there.
Right. And it's hard enough as a woman to go into a doctor's office and get care that is equal to a man's. I mean, if you say
Oh
you
yeah.
have pain, they're going to tell you lose weight or do something else. Wherever if a
Yeah.
man goes in, they get medications. But to be a woman who is also fat, and then this is not my experience, but also a woman of color that is fat going into
Yeah.
a doctor's office and having to deal with all of the biases and, racism and fat phobia that goes on, it's exhausting to have to do all of that. And if you don't know you
Yeah.
have options, then it can feel hopeless. So, at
Right.
least, if nothing else, I hope whoever gets to listen to this today knows you don't have to take it. You can definitely find another doctor. You do have options, and you don't have to just agree to everything they say if it doesn't feel right for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I know you emphasize the importance of considering the whole person. We talked about that a minute ago, the,
Hmm.
physical, mental, emotional, and even spiritual aspects of your holistic approach. Um, how do you think that concept changes your coaching and the way you coach fitness with your clients, kind of the whole holistic piece of it?
Mhm. Well, I do not think that we can compartmentalize or separate out parts of ourself and let those parts be independent. We are interdependent whole people. So let's take a fitness example. If you do a bicep curl, right?
Mhm.
It's mostly focusing on the muscle of the bicep, right? Your arm, like whenever you're doing a generic strong guy impression, right? The bicep. If you do that exercise, you're not only working the bicep. You can't only work the bicep. There is not any one muscle exercise. You cannot compartmentalize, you cannot separate out just one muscle. There are other parts, other helpers, other antagonists. Let me get out of my personal training stuff. Anyway, there's other parts of your body that are helping in
Mhm.
doing that exercise.
Mhm.
In that same way, when it comes to your physical body of doing the exercises, it's not just your physical body that's doing it, right? We
Mhm.
bring our mental and emotional and spiritual selves to all of that. And you can't separate out just the physical body. The reason that you take actions the way that you do things with your physical body is because of the emotions that you feel. You literally can't do actions without your emotions. And so, right? Your emotions then come from your thoughts. That's your mental body. And I think personally, and this is the third step of like my 3-step process of intuitive fitness, is reclaiming your authority and reasons for moving. And I think that whenever you figure out the spiritual part of you and it becomes one with your movement, that's where your internal motivation comes from, your why, like your
Mm.
deep reason for moving. That's not just a superficial thing. And it's not just like external voices that you've internalized, but
Mhm.
truly, whenever you get to your spirit of why you exist in a body, that reason is going to be very motivating for you to be able to figure out what kind of movement works best for you.
Absolutely. Well, and you had mentioned earlier about being a comedian, and I would think that being able to laugh and encourage other people to laugh is a vital component in your health and maybe
Oh,
even
yeah.
in the way that we are encouraged to interact with our bodies. Because I mean, laughing is definitely stress relief, but
Yeah.
the mental aspect of it is about you've got to be able to laugh at yourself and you've got to be able to laugh at life. Can you
Yeah.
just talk a little bit about how your sense of humor and comedy has impacted or influenced you and your personal health and maybe the health of your clients?
Oh my goodness. Well, I will say, to stay in the like, uh, the intellectual part of it real quick, is that laughing and like finding humor in yourself and your ridiculousness and life and everything, I think is part of self-compassion. And that is
Mm,
crucial to being able to create a healthy relationship with anything, but especially if we're
yes.
talking about non-diet space, right? Having a healthy relationship with food and movement. Having self compassion is crucial to it. And being able to laugh at yourself is like a sign that you have some self compassion, I think. So, but yeah, I think that fun is like one of the most important parts of literally anything. I I personally think that I am here on earth. Why would I not be trying to have fun like almost all of the time? And when it comes to health and fitness,
Mhm.
so many of us think of it as like a chore that we have to do and we hate it and it's hard, so it's like of course you don't want to do that. Okay, well what if it was fun?
Mhm.
Right,
Exactly.
like what if you didn't do the movements that you hated? What if you only did fun things? What if you
Mhm.
only did exercise that you enjoyed?
Mhm.
And so, literally, just like stepping way far back away from this concept of like what's the best kind of exercises to do? The best kind of exercise to do is the one that you will do, and you will do things that are fun.
Hmm.
Therefore, literally the most important part of like building a consistent habit is just have fun.
Absolutely. And I would think that if you can laugh at yourself, then you are much more accepting. You have this sort of unconditional acceptance of yourself as a human on this planet. If you can
Yeah.
laugh at some of the stupid stuff you might do, for
Yeah.
some of the things that happen that just seem ridiculous, there's no other option but to laugh at it because it's just so stupid.
Yeah.
So it gives you a lightness that I think we could really use right now when everything in life seems heavy. Being able to laugh at whatever is going on is sometimes the only way we can cope with even tragedy, right? You've got to laugh at
Yeah.
stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I very much believe I don't know, it's partly I was born with it and partly like my, upbringing built it into me, but like I couldn't care less what people think of me. Like so the idea of laughing at yourself, it's like I am so good at that because I am cringe and I am free. And please get in the water. The water is fine. Please join
Right.
me here. Like so if you are so like stuck in your ego and worried about what people are thinking of you, it's like, oh, sweetie, you can't control that. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Come have fun, laugh at yourself. Everything's much better over here.
Well, how do you see having that sort of compassion and self trust in yourself and your body? How do you see that help to empower people in their fitness journey?
Body trust is absolutely required for you to be able to hear and follow through with your body wisdom. So
Mm,
your body is always trying to tell you something. It's
mhm.
always communicating to you, right? Like it's like the dashboard of your car. Sometimes there's not any lights on, but that's also information, right? Like, yep,
Yeah.
everything's fine, keep on driving. But your body is telling you what it needs. It's not always super clear. We don't always speak the same language. So part of being able to hear and understand your body wisdom is building trust with your body so that you can speak the same language, so that you know whether you need to take a rest because you like legitimately are burnt out and you need the rest versus hearing that message from your body and trusting that it's like, no, this is my brain trying to avoid the hard thing, which is like that that's like my most common like challenge with my body wisdom. It's like, ooh, is this like a treat yourself kind of situation? Or is this a like you're indulging again? This is
Yeah.
not what you need. This is no
Right.
longer self-care. Right. So body trust helps you like parse out the nuances of the messages that your body is trying to tell you. And just like trust with a relationship with a person, you
Hmm.
don't you don't throw everything in on the first date. Like you don't go buy a wedding ring on the first date, right? Like
Well,
you
I don't
gotta
know.
build you gotta build it up slowly,
Uh-huh.
right? You have to earn your own trust.
Right.
And the way that you do that is slow, compassionately, right?
Hmm.
Like ideally having a support system that can sort of help you because if you just jump all the way in, and this is what a lot of people do, they haven't been to the gym in a long time and they decide they're going to go to the gym, they're going to get back on track and they go super hard and
Hmm.
they overdo it, whether they get injured or if they just go so hard that they're like exhausted for like 2 days
Right.
afterwards or whatever the reason. And it's not pleasant because they were really testing themselves and feeling like they had to make up for lost time or something.
Yeah.
And that doesn't build trust. Trust takes time. So rather than like diving head first, a way to build trust is to do the opposite, right? Like do the 1% increment at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, you will build up trust. And then you're not going to get burnt out because you have built up this practice with yourself of tuning into your body and just giving it a little bit at a time. Like, I know that I'm out of practice, body, but we're gonna do a little bit today, and I'm gonna check in and see how you're feeling. And this is me talking to my body, by the way, like
Sure.
having conversation, like asking for
Yeah.
consent and like, okay, how are you feeling? What are we feeling? We're feeling a little stiff. Okay, maybe we'll address that, right? Like, that's how you build trust. You don't just throw everything at the wall and
Mhm.
then you're completely burnt out after like one session.
Right. Right. And when we kind of go back to the whole aspect of the mind, body, spirit connection, if you don't have that trust with your body, if you don't have that connection,
Mhm.
it's really difficult to connect any of the other pieces of that puzzle. It's hard to trust your
Yeah.
intuition about anything in your life, about choices you make, about people you meet, about situations you find yourself in, if you can't learn to listen to your body and what it's telling you, because that's where the whole conversation with
Mhm.
intuition starts. That's why they call it a gut feeling, right? Your body is
Yeah.
talking to you. And if you're not listening, then that can really cause a lot of problems. So once you learn to trust your body, you can learn to trust the information it gives you, which is really your intuition. And that can only help you make better choices, be safe in dangerous situations, and
Mhm.
really make the most of the opportunities that come your way.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? Like, feelings are called that because we literally feel them in our body. And
Yes.
so, right, the emotional, we name them with emotions. The emotional part of you is part of the physical workout experience, right? So
Mhm.
like very explicitly, those two parts being part of the whole of you whenever you try to start like a new fitness experience.
I am so glad you brought that up because that reminds me of a couple of times, and I thought it was just me, but I've talked to a couple of clients that have said the same thing, that when they started moving their bodies more. I'll take the example of just even being on a treadmill, like in the safety of your home where
Mhm.
you don't have to go anywhere, or at the gym, you're on the treadmill. Emotions come up for you. I remember I got really angry and I started to cry and I didn't know. I was like, am I losing my mind? But it was just my body finally processing emotion because I was moving it in a
Mm.
way that made it feel safe enough to begin to release some of that. So I
Mhm.
know I've had, clients in the past say, "Oh, I just got mad," or it made me cry and I didn't want to do it. And it's like, well, it's supposed to. That's part of kind of a purging process that our body is
Mhm.
normally supposed to help us do a little bit of every day. But when we are constricting those feelings so tightly and we
Mhm.
don't want to express them, and we're not moving our body in a safe way, it's really hard to process all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So even without like getting into specifics of like, because I don't know about like the somatics of moving like nervous system energy
Hmm.
throughout our bodies, but I do know that, right? Like, feelings are literally energy in our body. If
Hmm.
we are repressing our feelings, that energy is still in our body. So even if you don't even think about it like as exercise, but literally
Right.
just moving your body helps to move that energy.
Hmm.
And so even from like a completely non-scientific, like I don't even know, like kind of way, if you just get up and like move your body and let energy flow if it's supposed to,
Hmm.
then that will certainly help you get more in touch with your emotions and your mental state and your spiritual state just by engaging your physical body, right? Like
Right.
letting things move.
Right. And maybe even for some people, just letting go of the idea of what fitness is supposed to look like. For some
Mhm.
people, it's running or weights or, rowing machines or whatever. But for other people, it's just turning on some music and moving their body, right? It's just dancing around
Mhm.
the house. Um, Curtains closed, of course, nobody can see. But moving your body in a way that feels safe and fun.
Mhm.
I am not a specialist in trauma, obviously, but I know there are a lot of trauma therapists and practitioners that encourage people to do that kind of thing, to move their bodies in certain ways or shake their bodies in comforting ways that can
Mhm.
help release some of that. So I think that's really fascinating to think about
Yeah.
how fitness and movement isn't just about being physically fit, but it's about your
Mhm.
emotional health and your mental health and your spiritual well-being all at the same time. How
Yeah,
powerful.
it absolutely is. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Now, one other thing that you mentioned is the concept of stepping out of the binary of fit versus lazy. How do you
Mhm.
help your clients navigate that and redefine their relationship with fitness?
Well, this thing where we get into cycles of like being into fitness and then like taking long avoidant breaks from it. It feels like an individual thing that's like proof of we're bad at fitness and like, oh my gosh, why can't I just like get my life together and like make this a consistent thing? But in reality, I can see that it is a predictable pattern. So it is a pendulum effect. And so I call it the fitness swing set. I have a freebie called Are You Stuck on the Fitness Swing Set? And it's
Hmm.
a quiz. And it's literally talks about like the process of, okay, so we get this motivation and we decide on Monday, we're gonna stick to this fitness routine, and we have like the whole month planned out, and we're gonna meal prep, and we're gonna go to these different gyms, and we're gonna use our class pass, and we're gonna write like all of the things that come with having a perfect life that gets organized first thing Monday morning,
Hmm.
right? So that's us pulling ourselves to stick to these strict rules. And then that's exhausting. So
Hmm.
almost instantly, we run out of energy and discipline and willpower because those are finite resources. And so then we swing to the other side of recovering and burnout. But we don't just stay there and recover. We actually pull ourselves there and rebel against that other version of ourselves where we're
Hmm.
like, oh my gosh, I hate exercise so much. Like it's so hard. It feels so terrible. Like this is so not me. And so then we're still pulling ourselves just to the other extreme. And then after a while of that, we start to like feel guilty or feel bad about ourselves. So then we pull ourselves back to this strict rules of fitness. And so we just keep pendulum swinging between these two things. And a pendulum, if you stop pulling on it, will eventually settle at an equilibrium in the middle, right?
Hmm.
And so that's what intuitive fitness is. It's to help us stop pulling ourselves to either side. And right in the middle, we can find a little bit of movement, a little bit of rest, right? Like just right. Like the porridge is just the right temperature, the bed's just the right size. Like intuitive fitness says you don't have to pull yourself in any direction. It is all going to fit if you can see the ways that toxic fitness culture is convincing you that you have to pull yourself to either
Hmm.
extreme. So I have a freebie. It's a quiz. And
Hmm.
then it also tells you, depending on like where you are in the pendulum swing, because it's not like two different people. That's two sides of the same coin, right?
Right.
Like this is applies to almost all of us.
Hmm.
And so depending on your answers to the quiz, it gives you the next steps of exactly what you should do depending on where you are in your pendulum swing.
Fantastic. I bet everybody's going to go over there. I'm probably going to go take that quiz myself. So tell me a little bit about your intuitive fitness coaching program.
Sure. So it is an hour long one on one weekly coaching. It
Hmm.
is 50% exercise, 50% mindset coaching, and 100% different.
Mm.
So it is basically like what we've been talking about. It
Hmm.
is, yes, we do exercises together, and I do it at a pace that is completely tailored to you and your interests and what you want to do and what you have available to you, all of that kind of stuff. But we also start the first half of the session is the mindset coaching because just doing the exercises isn't
Hmm.
going to change your relationship with the exercises. First, you have to think about what is your relationship with it right now.
Hmm.
And so we go through the 10 principles of intuitive movement. Sometimes we go through intuitive eating. We go through body neutrality and body image coaching. We go through all of these different tools, and we do mindset coaching that we use those, and then we're thinking about those whenever we go into the movement. And so the movement practice, the exercise that we do together is really like a corrective experience, because
Hmm.
so many of us, if we don't have a healthy relationship with fitness right now, like if we feel like we sort of hate it, or if it's like a chore, that's because toxic fitness culture has gotten in the way. And so all of our experiences with fitness have been probably like negative. And
Right.
so I want us together to have a corrective experience where you can feel for yourself what movement does for you. You don't need me to tell you what the benefits are, because I'm going to ask you before we start how
Hmm.
you feel and how you want to feel at the end. And then at the end of moving, you tell me how you feel. I don't know what the benefits are. You tell me. And
Yeah.
part of that is learning how to feel into your body, and knowing how movement does make you feel with trial and error and practice. And so
Hmm.
yeah, it is still exercise, but it's also incorporates the mindset coaching so that even after our work together, you can go on and continue your intuitive movement practice. Whereas with most personal trainers, you show up, you do your exercise for that time, and then that's sort of where you are.
Yeah. I think that's a fascinating concept to start with the mindset, because the mindset that we've been sold is about go harder, go faster, no
Mhm.
pain, no gain. And if that's the only experience you have with fitness, no wonder it feels hard. It's
Yeah.
made hard. If you don't do it perfect, you don't do it right. I mean,
Yeah.
all that kind of craziness that goes on in our head, if we could just dismantle that and explore the concepts of why do I want to do it? What is the benefit for me? Not what, the
Mhm.
weight loss benefit, but why else do I want to do this? Why do I want to make this a consistent part of my life? Because I think that's the other thing that's sometimes missing too. When we start a fitness program, especially in the beginning of the year, it's a means to an end. It's to fit in the bikini, it's to lose the weight,
Mhm.
it's to have a, new year, new you nonsense that's going on. But we
Yeah.
never think about what is the value of this for me personally? How will this change me? How will it change my relationship with myself? And
Yeah.
if I can really do this and then take the skills I learned, I can apply that to absolutely anything else I want to change in my life. That feels so
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah, it's completely about taking your own power back from toxic fitness culture, or from some sort of external source telling you what your body is here for, and like what your body can do and what it should look like. It is completely about you feeling into your own body and tapping into your spirit, and knowing like, oh, no, 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 no. My body is here for me to do whatever I want with it, right? It's here for me to go on hikes. It's here for
Mhm.
me to go dance at a Beyonce concert. It's here for me to go like push my nephew on a swing. It is
Right.
not here for all those other reasons. Yeah, absolutely.
So I know people can find you on your website, which I will include in the show notes. So if you head over to Deanna's website, you're not only going to be able to get the quiz and some of the other freebies that she has over there, you'll be able to learn more about the intuitive movement program that she does, what that coaching is like. And if you want to taste without a commitment, she also offers some really cool classes that are pre recorded. They're only $10, which is a steal, if you ask me. You can go over, you can see her, hear her, get a little taste of what working with her would be like, and then you can sign up for her program. Deanna, what final words or advice would you give someone who feels like they're maybe trapped in some of the expectations of toxic fitness culture and they really are struggling to find a way to enjoy movement? What would you suggest they do just to get started?
First, I would suggest figuring out how to get those rules about what fitness is out
Mhm.
of your brain. So that's what I do. I help people get those rules out of their brain. But any sort of self-questioning of like, is this true? Is that true? Is that a real fact? Or do I just think it's true because enough people have said it, or because like
Mm.
somebody important has said it? Right.
Mhm.
So questioning all of those rules and beliefs that toxic fitness culture has taught us, and then coming back to finding your fun. That's one of the principles of intuitive movement. Find your fun. Like,
I
it
love
doesn't
that.
matter if it's quote unquote good enough. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter if it's like effective, quote unquote. It doesn't matter anything. Is it fun to you? That's the best way to get started.
I love that. Is it fun? Whoever thought that fitness would be fun. When we were kids, it wasn't called fitness. It was called,
Right.
recess. And then it
Yes,
was fun.
exactly.
That's so funny. So much good information. So, as we kind of wrap up our conversation, it's really clear that your journey and approach to fitness and wellness are both groundbreaking and deeply necessary. And from what I've learned from you today, it really underscores the need to challenge and change the toxic aspects of fitness culture that promote these really unrealistic and actually harmful standards. Now, for those of you listening, I think Deanna's perspective as a personal trainer and body image coach, coupled with her personal experience, challenges the conventional narratives around fitness and body image. And her dedication to creating an inclusive and accepting fitness space is not just inspiring, but it's a call to action for all of us to rethink how we approach our own health and wellness. So, I'm going to recap some of the key takeaways I've kind of got from today's podcast episode. First, I think Deanna's commitment to creating a fitness space that's inclusive of all body types really challenges the fitness industry norms and offers a welcoming environment for everybody. Also, her approach redefines what it means to be fit, which helps you move away from the one size fits all standard of uh, normal fitness, and it acknowledges the diversity of all bodies and all abilities. Plus, her personal experience as a fat, queer, asthmatic individual with injuries and all kinds of issues really informs her empathetic and holistic approach to training and to coaching. So, if you feel like you've never been heard or understood, I think Deanna is the perfect coach for you. Plus, the integration of intuitive eating, your intuitive movement principles, and body acceptance into this coaching philosophy really highlights the importance of a healthy relationship with food and body and overall wellness, mind, body, and spirit. And finally, I really think your story is a testimony to the empowerment that comes from self acceptance, self compassion, and really learning to trust your own body. And your ongoing journey with personal and professional growth really serves as an inspiration for other people that could find themselves in similar situations. And it demonstrates that change and improvement are always possible no matter what. Thank you, Deanna. I think that your honesty and vulnerability are so impressive, and the impactful work you're doing is inspirational. Your story is really a beacon of hope and a powerful example of how embracing our authentic selves could lead to a more fulfilling and a healthier life. Fitness or no fitness, you can always be healthy.
Holly, thank you so much. That was beautiful. Yes. If nothing else, I want to empower people to take back the authority over their lives. And it can be fun.
It can be fun. You heard it here. So thank you for joining us on another episode of the Say Win podcast. Now, remember all the links to Deanna's fabulous stuff, her freebies, her website, her classes, her coaching program, all of that's going to be in the show notes. So check it out when you get a chance. Deanna, thank you so much. This was so much fun. Maybe we can do it again. I would love that.
Yes, I would love that. Thank you so much.
Until next time, everybody. Thanks for now and bye. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Say When, the podcast for women who've had enough of diet culture and are ready to get on with their lives. If you'd like to learn more about working with me, send me a DM through Instagram at Holly Toscanini, or you can find me on my website, hollytoscanini.com. Thanks for joining me.